PartII 360 TV proudly presents Messages of Inspirational Stories, broadcasting and live streaming to millions of devices around the world, including Roku, and live streaming to Facebook Live. Also on Amazon Fire TV and to Twitch. Also Android TV and Periscope. Broadcasting to Apple TV and YouTube Live. Proudly brought to you by our host, Donna producer and host, Mikayla Vidal, host and administrator, and Jim Grant, producer and host. Proudly brought to you by the 6minutewebinar.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Messages of Inspirational Stories. Mikayla, yesterday was so much fun talking about, motivating yourself and others and how we help our children. And by helping our children, we're actually motivating ourselves.
Right. The circle goes around.
It does. It really does.
Succeed. And it makes you feel good as a parent too. Like,
absolutely.
You don't feel like you're failing. You feel like you're successful. So then it makes you want to keep doing better too.
Absolutely. And it's important to understand that when we feed ourselves motivating thoughts in our children, that it's a synopsis, because it literally goes all over our body. And what we feed ourselves, just as though, eating really good food, being intentional about what we put in our bodies is a good thing. It's also just as important to be intentional and feed ourselves good thoughts, because it's a paradigm. And that paradigm shift, whether we know it or not, subconsciously moves on to everybody around us, right? So just like if, and I'm not knocking that any of the fast food restaurants, but we all know that it's not the healthiest diet. Let's put it that way, right? And if you fed your children, one restaurant for, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a month, it would change their molecular structure and how the food is being utilized in their body, and it would be some definite health marker differences. But the same goes to what we say to ourselves and our children.
Right. It's definitely because, if you just as adults too, if someone's always talking negatively about you, you're going to feel negatively, and then you're really going to question if you're worthy of it, of doing anything, or if, what's the point of even trying if, everyone's just going to get on to me anyways. The same goes for kids. And I feel like a lot of times it's 10 times more difficult for kids because they really don't understand, as an adult, you can simply, well, so-and-so's having a bad day, they're taking it out on me, whatever. Kids take all that to heart.
They do. And just, it's been my observation with my own children that, and I'm not one who can hide my emotions well. You can read it in my face, right? So, if I'm in a great mood, you can read it. And if I'm in a sad mood, you can read it. You can feel it.
Right.
And if I'm in an angry mood, it's the same way. And that, it's like invisible. I look at it like it's invisible tentacles, right, that come off of us and go out to everything and everybody around us. And children pick up feeling that on an emotional energy level, especially when they're very young and they're not overly verbal, but they pick up on that feeling and that energy quicker than they do with the verbal.
Oh, yeah. They can tell if something's wrong, and it can even cause them to react. They can be a little bit more distant if they think, you're in a bad mood, or, they'll tiptoe around, you, and you don't really want them to do that either. That's kind of where communication comes into play. If you are having a bad day, it's okay. Kids have bad
Right.
days too. Obviously, they're not always going to be in the best mood all the time, but,
Right.
let them know, as a parent, as an adult, and, not necessarily just when you have kids, but, you're going to have bad days too. You're going to have days where, you're sad or just more stressed or whatever the situation
Mhm.
may be, and when you communicate that, kids are really understanding, and if they see you having a bad day, 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to walk up to you and give you a hug,
Mhm.
so, and you don't even have to say anything. You don't even have to say, like, mommy's having a bad day, they'll just come give you a hug. Kids
Right.
know without knowing, but
Mhm.
being open with them is super important, just so they're not, hesitant or, wondering if they
If
did
it's their fault.
something wrong. Yeah, exactly. Because,
Yeah,
you
children
don't get
internalize
their
that
fault.
rather quickly.
And it's not something they're going to be, mommy, did I do something wrong? They're going to just think it. They're going to feel it. They're going to come up with every situation that they
Right.
think in their head that they did, even though they had nothing to do with it. So
Right. Right.
communicating is really good, when it comes to that, how you're feeling. And it helps too, because when they're upset, they can communicate that they're upset and having a bad day too. And
Right.
that is really helpful.
It is. It's leading by example. And I've
Mhm.
always was a firm believer, still am, that the more you communicate with your littles when they are little, that the easier it will be to communicate with them when they're teenagers, when they don't want to say anything, right? Because
I was gonna say that's like the prime time you want them to start talking.
exactly. And that's when you really want that open communication and that
Right.
acceptance level. And that can't start in the 11th hour. It has
Right.
to start early, early on in communication. And that's, and that's part of the motivating yourself and others. When we motivate our children, and of course, we talked about it yesterday, Mikayla, we have to
Mhm.
motivate at what they're doing at that age level, right? So, how you motivate your 1 year old is going to be different than how you motivate your 3 year old or your 7 year old or your,
Mhm.
all the ages in between.
Oh yeah, because they, especially as they get older, they have different, situations that they have to deal with. School is a really common one.
Right.
But yeah, it's important to build that relationship when they're younger so that you're not, they're older and you're wondering, why are they not talking to me? If you
Hmm.
have that relationship in place, they're more likely to talk to you. They're not going to talk to you all the time, but it's not like you're not having to start here when you're already here. You're not
Right.
having to build that relationship and all that trust and everything when it could have been there to begin with from the very start.
Right. Building the foundation at a young
Mhm.
age that you can come to mommy and daddy and tell us whatever's going on in your life. And that is a
Right.
no, that is no one's going to be in trouble. No
Right.
one's going to be, upset. We're going to work through this.
Right.
So, and I know, school is just tough. That's,
Mhm.
kids are trying to find their own identity and we don't know what everyone's going through in their own
Right.
life. And so,
Mhm.
unfortunately, we find because children learn, as we said, by example of parents. So, if something is going on in your child's friend's life at home, and normally that they're a great person, and all of a sudden they start acting out and saying horrible things,
Mhm.
it's usually indicative of what is going on in their own personal life that
Right.
is manifesting itself outward.
Mhm.
And so that's where that foundation starting at a young age and starting when they're a year old. That is not too early of a time to start, and I was thinking about this from our show yesterday. Your 1 year old's world is going to turn upside down in a few short months because carrying her is not going to be a thing that's going to
She
happen.
is not going to be the baby. I think about it every day.
Right?
Because even in my head, like as a mom, I'm like, I cannot even picture another baby. Like to me, she's mama's girl, and none of my kids have been mama's girl. And it's slightly annoying sometimes because all she wants is mommy. And I'm like, why can't you just go to daddy? Right.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know what she's going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. She just wants mommy, and it's not even all the time just to be carried. She just wants to be near me.
Right.
If she sees me walking past, she starts whining and crawling to me. She just has to be like right next to me. She's
Right.
like a little dog. She has to be right there. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's going to be amazing.
Part of me is like, she'll adjust just fine because I don't know. I feel like kids just naturally adjust because she's not really like needy, like you have to hold me kind of.
Right.
She's just all about mommy, which I don't know. Hopefully she'll be okay. I'm sure she will. But I think a lot of that has to do how you know we go about it too. You know,
it's true. And you know, I was reading.
Attention.
Absolutely. And I was reading, preparing for the show. And one of the things I read I thought was so appropriate that I wanted to share it with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
While children build their identity, question the world around them, and identify their strengths, how they talk to themselves plays a major role when it comes to determining the life they will lead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we touched on this yesterday, and I know we've talked about it on previous shows as well, but it's very true because how we talk to ourselves is actually more important than how somebody else talks to us because it's what we hear first.
Right.
Okay. And we tend to, when we talk in our head, when it's bad, then that's what we internalize. And it honestly changes our body and our reception to how we take everything in. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the same goes, of course, with our children. And,
Right.
you know, we talked about the little ones yesterday, you know, things you can do to reward them. I mean, go on a walk and everyone collect a rock and then they get to paint them. Do you want to paint a butterfly? Do you want to paint a ladybug? What do you want to be? What do you want to paint? And that can be part of that, you know, time together, motivating the littles in that reward system. So look for a rock that is more of the shape of something that you want to paint. And we talked about that. And that is such a, you know, you did that yesterday, or not yesterday, but on the show you talked about it. You did it the other day with your kids, painting outside. And they all had fun, all the ages of them.
Oh, yeah. That's something, you know, it's good to get their creative minds going. Creativity is so, so important. And, you know, it's really not hard to find something that everybody can do. It can be, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be like, you know, don't overthink it, you know, because some kids may like to do this and some kids may like to do that. But there are a whole bunch of things that, you know, everyone would love to do. Paint, whether it be painting, going on a walk, playing I Spy while you go on a walk, you know, riding your bikes on the walk. My kids love to cook, so cooking is another one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of things. You can come up with little games. You know, you just have to, you know, don't overthink it. I think that's the biggest thing. It's just when moms overthink, you know, well, so-and-so's not going to like this. Kids are picky, but they're not that picky. You know, if it's family time, they'll take family time.
Yep.
You know, if they see mom and dad doing it too, really, it's all about mom and dad doing it too. Maybe, you know, I could probably say if I was just like, okay, only y'all are going to do this, maybe they'll be like, really, do I have to? But if, you know, you get in and you join them, you know, it's a whole different, you know, situation in their head because mommy and daddy are doing it too, or, you know, just mommy or whoever. Right. It really does, you know, they love that.
Well, they do, because at the end of the day, I look at it like this, you know, when I die, my children aren't going to be thinking about how many times I made them re-clean the bathroom at
Right.
age 12 because they didn't do it right the first, second, or third time. And trust me,
Right.
that happened. But there, and not saying that they won't think of it, but they'll think of it with laughter, right?
Right.
They'll think about it with a warmness that, yeah, mom was pretty tough on that. But, then it will, just as stories do, it'll progress into other things,
Hmm.
like one of our favorite things was hiding when somebody was coming in the house and scaring the living bejeebers out of them. And it, it was so much fun. It was absolutely awesome. My middle Gaia would scream so loud. She'd just sit there and almost straight arm down and shake with the
Oh,
scream. So the more I could make her do that, the more fun it was for the rest of us.
but hey, those are the kind of things that, they pass on and they do it too.
Hmm.
They keep it going.
And they will absolutely remember that. I think it's important in teaching our children how to motivate each other,
Oh, yes.
right? And I think it's important, like in your case, it's a prime example because you have 6 children
Mhm.
and all of them can motivate, well, maybe not the 1 year old because, she's not quite verbal yet, but doesn't mean they can't help motivate her. She
Right.
can't exactly motivate them, but it's a great tool to teach them in that communication how important it makes them feel by encouraging their sister, their sibling.
Right. And it's just something that can, come naturally when, you do it to them. Like when she finally learned how to crawl up the stairs, I was so excited for her to learn, and now I'm like, okay, can you not? Now I have to
Right?
buy a baby gate. But they'll be grabbing all her toys and they're like, go Aviana, go Aviana, you can do it. And it's like, that is just like a proud mom moment,
Right?
especially when they're, older and supporting each other and cheering each other on, because it's so important to, for your kids to understand that not everyone's going to have a good day. Some
Right.
days, you're going to have to pick each other up, and that's okay, but to be there and have that support, because on your bad days, the last thing you want people to do is be like, well, you can't do it, on a day that you're already feeling down. It's so important to be there for each other,
Mhm.
because I know we're not always going to be there, for them. And to know that they're there for each other is important. And then to know that they can do that with other people is important because, you never know what everyone else is going through. And as long as I know my kids are there to motivate whoever else's
Mhm.
children, that makes me feel good too, because that's so important to bring that out in the world, not even just within the house, but everywhere else too.
It is. And in motivating, teaching our children how to motivate other children as well, the beautiful part about that is learning acceptance of other people and their differences.
Right.
So, a story. I remember one of my children was in school, and there was a little boy who I don't know what it was that he was going through, the diagnosis. It had a
Mhm.
very long name, but he drooled a lot. Okay,
Mhm.
like a lot, and he was different, and he never had a snack. When they were really young and in early school, they had a little snack time. And my child came home and said this little boy didn't have a snack and always felt left out. I said, okay. I said, so I'll tell you what, sweetheart. I said, I will pack doubles of everything. And then that way you can share.
Right.
So my children grew up on, home cooked meals, home lunches. So this child ended up having great snacks. And then everybody else was like, well, why does he get a great snack? Right. But it was really great because we had a birthday party and we invited him over. And it was the first, and I want to say at that time, My kids was around 8 or 9,
Hmm.
and it was the first party that this little boy had been invited to because he was different. Nobody
Wow.
wanted to be his friend. And I mean, I had, the big tears coming. His
Right.
dad came up and thanked me and gave me a hug. His mother, because this child had difficulties, apparently had left when they were young. And so, yeah, so here dad was raising him with some, obviously some difficulties in
Right.
in challenges in life, and his sibling. But it was a great learning experience because my child learned how to not only give, but also defend for that child.
Right.
Right. And then later on in high school, um, I was told that whatever it was, whatever problem he had, he pretty much outgrew it and, you know, was a normal teenager. And I thought, how beautiful, and
Yeah.
my whole thing is that we all left a small footprint in his heart,
Right.
right? We left that heart print, I should say, heart print, and in his heart, whether he remembers it or not, it was motivating that child, my child, and myself. Because,
Right.
I always feel better when I give,
Right.
right? And that's part of what motivating yourself and others is. It's
Hmm.
giving to yourself, right? You're giving yourself a gift. And when you motivate others and teach your children to motivate others, it's that gift that the energy echoes
Keep on
throughout,
giving.
the right. It just keeps going and growing. And that is a beautiful thing. And we need
Oh,
that more today than ever before.
oh yeah, it's super, super, super important to teach your kids to, give that, they can feel good, because I feel like right now, a lot of kids, well, probably back in the day too, but, you always hear about kids or see kids, firsthand where they're not happy unless they get everything that they want. And, I always, growing up, I was like, I do not want my kids to be like that.
Mhm.
And it's so important to teach your kids that they can be fulfilled and be happy when they give. And that is so important to teach your kids. And that can even, you can start that as a young age too,
Mhm.
make it a habit, because once they start, they're just, once they start thinking of other people, and yeah, of course it's, good for them to think about themselves, but for them to realize that they can be filling up their cup while they're doing something for other people is super important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it teaches them a greater purpose other than themselves.
Right.
Like I've always had animals with my children growing up,
Hmm.
and it for me, first of all, I'm a huge animal lover, but it was very important because it taught my children to love, be
Right.
gentle. It taught them responsibility. Clean the water bowl. Why do I have to clean the water bowl? Okay, biofilm. They're looking at me like, what? And I'm like, biofilm. Dump the water out, feel the bottom of the bowl, and it's all
Oh,
slimy, right?
slimy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's biofilm. And that biofilm is actually very, very, very bad for your animals. So,
Hmm.
it was teaching them all these little pieces of the puzzle of life and teaching them that there is something more than themselves, and to be able
Right.
to give more and to expand their heart to other creatures. And to me, that was really important. And I've watched my children in their lives continuously do that.
That's
And that
awesome.
is right. That is a beautiful thing. I've my one daughter is going to school to be a nurse, right? She wants to, reach out and help people.
Hmm.
Um, my children just are very diverse. And sometimes I look at them and think, I raised all three of you the same way. How y'all so different? Right.
Isn't
But
that
that's the
crazy?
right. But that's the beauty of being, like we talked about yesterday, of being perfectly imperfect.
Right.
Because we all have our own stamp, we all have our own imprint in life, and how we develop is obviously starts at home. We have a lot of influence from the outside, but we can mitigate that bad influence by what we do at home.
Right. And it all starts when they're younger too. The outside, I think, as a parent to a 13-year-old, I'm learning. I thought, the mouths as they got older were bad. I'm learning, but I'm like, Mom, I've had to call my mom a few times and be like, I'm so sorry. Remember that time that this happened? Yeah, now I'm going through it. What did you do again?
Right.
But see, like, I knew what worked and what didn't work. I knew the ways to go around it or whatever. And so now I'm like, you can't trick me. But I think it's so hard as a parent, when they reach, the age where they're like trying to figure out who they are, but then, they have outside influences and really trying to not influence them, but to motivate them, that who they are is who they need to be, and that there's nothing wrong with them. They're loved for who they are, how they are. And no one needs to change that, no matter what anybody on the outside says or thinks. Right. And I think that's really important. That's where it comes, motivation comes into, a different play than younger kids, because younger kids, they're so innocent, even though they're like naughty and they throw tantrums sometimes, they do it so innocently because they have like no idea, they're still learning to like control their emotions. And even when they get older, they're still learning how to, they have a whole bunch of new emotions when they're older, so it's trying to motivate them is going to be completely different. Being like, hey, you want some fruit snacks? It ain't gonna work. It's not the same. Do you want to go ride your bike outside? Okay, let's clean our room. Right. Let's sing the cleanup song. Like, it doesn't work quite that way. I wish, but it doesn't. For me, because like with us, that's where, the communicating comes so much into play, even though I feel like sometimes they're just staring at us like, what are you saying? I swear they listen, even though it may not seem like it sometimes. But, and then also, I know we're going to get into it about the whole one-on-one time. Having one-on-one time, especially when they're older, is so important because that's like the time where they need to know that you're there, that you have their back, and even if they're, we always tell our kids, like, even if, we're going to be the parents where, even if you do something wrong, like, let us know, like, you may get into trouble, but we don't, we're a really open house, it's lying is, not okay. We'd rather tell us the truth. Yeah, you'll probably get into trouble depending on what it is, but you'll get into more trouble, if you're lying about it. If you need help, like, let us know. That's how we are. And, communication is huge when they're older, because that's when they're going through the mom and dad aren't cool anymore.
Mom and dad are stupid.
We haven't reached that point yet. I'm still a cool mom, apparently, so I'll take it. But I'm sure eventually I'll reach a moment where I'm not the cool mom anymore. Right. I'm mean mom. I feel like I'm mean mom, but whatever. Dad's always the good one. I'm always the mean one. That's what it seems like anyways. I
was both, so I don't know what to tell you. I was the good mom, and I was the cool mom, and I was the mean mom.
I feel like I'm the mean one, but I probably am a little bit more strict on them just because I'm with them all the time. So like they can't get away with everything because it's like, totally saw you do that, and like Dad's just like, whatever she said. Like, thanks. Okay.
But I think you touch on something really important that I think we need to dive into for a minute here, is understanding that motivating your kids at home, it builds that foundation because of the outside world will come at them soon enough. So, I remember when I was 7 years old, and
Mhm.
how innocent I was because the world wasn't as ugly and violent, to be honest with you, as it is today. And
Right.
I'm not saying that there wasn't violence and ugliness out
Right.
there, but it was not prevalent every single day like it is today. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember growing up here and streets were clean and people were a lot nicer, and that we
Mhm.
didn't have so many issues. We didn't have the drugs. We didn't have, so your children at that young age will be introduced and know what drugs are
Oh,
so
yeah.
dang much earlier than I was, and so much earlier than
Right.
you were, right?
Oh, yeah.
Um, and so having that motivation and building that communication with your children, so that when they are out there in that outside world and
Mhm.
get that crap coming in on them, they have their core values already in place and instilled in them,
Right.
and that, praying that that doesn't alter,
Right.
that it doesn't swing the pendulum to the other direction.
Mhm. And I think as a parent, I think that's my biggest fear, like knowing, I mean, you can only do so much because to me, it's like you can teach them, you can warn them, you can show them, you can do as much as you can. They're going to do whatever they want at the end of the day. That's how it was. That's how I see it. That's how I took it as a kid. Like,
Right,
you can tell me as much as you want. I'm still going to do my own thing,
right.
but my biggest fear is that they find out for themselves and then it's like, I told you so, but I never want my kids to go through, well, I told you not to do that. Cause like
Right.
when they're younger and it's like, don't jump on the bed and then they fall off the bed, that I told you so is different than, them getting, whether it be pregnant, drugs, like there's so many different issues when they're
Right.
older that I'm just like, can we just stay little just forever? Because I
You
don't even
know,
want to think about any of that, especially nowadays. I'm just like,
right.
how do I even go about it? Because it's like how my parents went about it is going to be completely different than how we go about it because it's
Mhm.
like,
Times change.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Like there's things my daughter asked me and I'm like, what? You know about what? Like,
Right?
like, can you explain what that is? Because I don't even know what that is. Clearly, I need to be looking this stuff up because I'm just like, am I really that old to where I have never heard of whatever you're talking about?
That's
But
funny.
luckily, with my 9-year-old, no, she's not 9, she's 7 or 8. I don't know. I get lost with all their ages, but right now she's at the point where she's learning that not everyone's going to be nice because
Mhm.
she has a very kind heart, but she's also very, I don't want to say emotional, but she's very emotional. She wears her heart on her sleeve.
I
So
get it.
she doesn't really expect everyone to be nice, but it like hurts her feelings like really
Mhm.
bad. It's like she has a bad, like she'll come home and be like, Mommy, I had a bad day.
Mhm.
And, part of me is like happy that she can communicate why she has a bad day. And, we sit down with them and we'll ask them, how their day was at school and all that. But, she's like, my friend, or, she's not my, elementary drama. We're
Right.
not friends anymore. But, she was saying I was doing something and I wasn't. And so now we're not friends and I don't want her to be at school tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, I remember this elementary drama was I was in elementary. Let's have a sit down, let's talk.
Mhm.
Like, having to explain to her, that there's actually a quote about it and I loved it and I want to read it because it was about, being kind and it was being kind is never wasted. And I love that. And I want to tell her that because, you can be kind and that's all that matters, not to expect it in return, don't treat them how they treat you,
Right.
treat them how you want to be treated. And I think the golden rule has changed so many times, like wording wise. But anytime I tell her that, she's like, you mean the golden rule? And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, like that. But
Well, and
it's so important.
it is, and I think letting your children know that when somebody else treats them poorly,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not a really, and this is so hard. This is where the difficulty comes, because they're not mentally and emotionally mature enough yet to quite grasp it. But to teach them and set that in principle, that foundation of understanding that, sweetie, them saying that mean thing, like, all right, Judy called me ugly, and I'm not ugly, Mom. Okay, whatever it is, right? That, honey, that is not about you. That's about how she's
Right.
feeling about herself. And,
Right.
when you were talking, it just came to me. I couldn't help but think maybe that this would be a great idea for children. So when
Mm-hmm.
they've had a really bad day, and they come home crying, that they write down, I had a bad day, and put
Mm-hmm.
it in the bad day jar. But now what they get to do is take two things that was good about their day and put it in the good jar, because then you're balancing out and
Right.
upping the motivation, right?
Right.
And the good energy, because one good to one bad is equal, and then you
Right.
put another good one in there, and now
A
you're
little bonus.
upping, right? You're trumping it.
Yeah, it's like that. I don't know if it's a saying, but when they tell you for every if someone says something negatively to you, you have to build them up with like 2 or 3 affirmations or something like that.
Exactly, exactly.
It's a good idea. I've
Mhm.
also I heard about something. It's called, you get a box and you call it the worry box. Just because some kids are more like worriers than
Mhm.
others. Like my daughter worries about everything, like every situation or scenario that's probably impossible that's going to happen, she's worrying about. Um, and at like the most random times. But you get a box, and everything that they're worried about in that time, you write it on a piece of paper, you put it in the box, and when they don't worry about it anymore, or when they're not worried about it anymore, per se, they take it out, and then they can throw it away or rip it up or whatever this situation may be. I haven't tried that, but I just recently read about it. But I don't know if it works. But it was pretty interesting, because
Right.
when it does come to all those things, every kid's going to be different, and have their own little things that they're either worried about, or, if they're extra emotional, or,
Mhm.
because with her, she has a hard time understanding, like, well, why isn't everybody else nice? Because she came home this one time and she's like, this kid fell. I guess some kid in her class fell. And she's like, everybody was laughing at him, and the teacher was too. And I was just standing there and I was looking at everybody, and I was like, what if it hurt? Like, what if it
Right.
hurt him? Because, to her, she was like, I remember falling and I remember it hurt really bad. So she's like, that's the only thing I could think about. And I was like, well, that's good,
She
just,
stood in her integrity,
yeah, right. And that makes me proud, because I'm like, I
right?
probably would laugh too, so it's
Mhm.
like, job well done, pat on the back, and it's like, it's amazing when kids do stuff like that, because it's like, it's not even something that, we teach. It's not like, oh, hey, when someone falls down, don't laugh. Like, you don't teach those specific
Right.
situations, per se, but it's like, where do they even, it's just amazing how they learn and when they learn.
Mhm.
And then you have all those proud mom moments, and you're just like, okay, well, even on the days you feel like you're going crazy, like, you're clearly doing something right.
Exactly, exactly. That is awesome, because she stood in her integrity, and
Hmm.
even when the teacher laughed, which I think is deplorable. Okay, I think it's deplorable that a teacher would laugh when a child
I know. I'm like, did
falls.
she try to help him up or something? And she's
Right,
like, no. And then I was like, did you try to help him up? And she's like, well, we had to stand in the line, So she tries to like follow the rules, because she doesn't want to get into trouble.
right.
And then, with like COVID and everything, they're not even supposed to like touch each other. So, she's like, we can't do this, we can't do that. But I'm like, but I was just looking at everybody, and I'm like, what if it hurt? I'm like,
Oh,
I'm like, that's true. What if it did hurt?
right, right. Well, I think, those foundations and motivating are huge. And I love what you talk about the worry box. And I talked about this one time on a show with Jim.
Hmm.
Some children are more prone to nightmares,
Mm.
right? And one of the things that I exercise in high energy performance is for people who are having, especially children, but
Hmm.
even adults who have a nightmare and reoccur, that they draw it out on a piece of paper, and then safely, once they draw it out on a piece of paper, it's in front of them. And one of the things that I recommend, and of course with children, it has to be supervised,
Right.
but yet you take it and you burn it in a safe place. You burn that nightmare piece of paper, right? Because
Right.
now you have taken it from it's scaring me to here it is on paper, and now it's all gone because you put it on
Right.
paper and you burned it, and so now that nightmare has to go away. And
Right.
what that does is it helps motivate them in understanding that it's no longer there in a reality sort of way to
Right.
make them feel scared. And so that kind of thing can be done, maybe not by, if you don't want to burn it, I totally understand that, but you can do that in different ways, by
Hmm.
getting rid of it,
Right.
in different creative ways.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it also gives them a sense of, control of the situation as
Yep.
well.
Sense of ownership on it.
Hmm.
And that's important to understanding self motivation, is how we control, ourselves. I mean, it took me forever, and I do mean forever, to get my bad temper under control. And I truly have a hair triggered temper, but you'll rarely see it. And I do mean rarely anymore, because I finally came to the understanding that it wasn't serving me,
Right.
right? It wasn't serving me except to increase my blood pressure, get upset over something that I couldn't control. And right,
Right.
so I changed those paradigms within myself to something a little more motivating. And and my husband loves to use this analogy, is play the tape forward, Donna. Play the tape forward. I'm like, oh, I like that.
Really good one.
Right? Play the tape forward, because what are you experiencing right now? Is it really going to serve a purpose in a month?
Right.
Going to serve a purpose in 6 months? Are you going to be in that position to remember it?
Right. And I like that because you can even, use that for, your kids, no
Mhm.
matter what age they are, because they can think about, their actions, especially when it
Right.
comes to helping other people and putting, doing things for other people to, make them feel better because, it makes them, compared to, say, if you bought them a new toy, like how long are they really going to play with it? Whereas if you go and you help so and so, with their yard, or, you help out at the pet shelter, or
Mhm.
donate stuff to them, how far is that going to go? Whereas your toy is probably going to last like 2 days. You're
Right.
going to forget about it. What's going to be more beneficial in the long run?
Absolutely. Um, okay, this is weird. I'm getting feedback. Are you getting it?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I get the feedback when I'm talking, and now it's not there. All right. The wonders of technology. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry about the feedback, but now it's gone. That motivation and foundation of our children learning to give to others, motivate each other, motivate themselves, is so important, because they are our greatest treasure. They are the future of the world. They're our future leaders. They're our future everything. You know,
Mhm.
everything we do around those children, and even though my children are grown, living their own lives, I'm a mom, and I think about them every single day, each and every one of them, right?
24 hours
So,
of the day.
mhm, right? So, like my daughter is engaged, and I knew that her fiance's father had gotten ill and was taken to the hospital. They thought at first he had suffered a massive heart attack. Um,
Mhm.
and he was ended up on life support, and he had a DNR, and the
Wow.
family had to pull the plug because of his DNR, and I'm constantly thinking about, my children and everything that they go through in every aspect of their life. And just because they're 2,000 miles away from me doesn't mean I don't think about them. But,
Right.
and that's the other thing. I hope that I have instilled those proper values. I know
Right.
when my oldest daughter was out here, she came out for a little longer, for a little vacation, a little mom daughter time. And we talked about it. We talked about, yeah, mom, I remember. I remember you working 7 days a week. I
Mhm.
remember everything you sacrificed for us. You always made sure there was food. You always, tried to be there for us in every possible way. I remember you working, 80 hours, two jobs. I remember you working 114 hours a week, making sure that the bills were paid, there was food on the table, and that everybody was being taken care of. And the examples we set for our children are everything.
Oh yeah.
They're the stepping stone to their future.
And then they appreciate everything, as they get older, and then they're in the situation, or just understanding when they start working, the hard, everything that you have to actually pay for, and
Right.
the worth of $1, especially now, it's not even the same as back then. It's all the time, and they understand everything more when they're older. And
Hmm.
everything that you teach in the house, it's crazy, because it's, even if so and so next door, down the street, whatever, they don't have the same things taught to them. It just takes your kids just to motivate another person, and that kid can see how they feel when they're being motivated, or having positive affirmations come their way, and they carry that on too. So
Hmm.
it's the gift that keeps on giving.
It is. It is. One of one of my children's friends was in a position where in high school where he didn't have a place to live.
Hmm.
And so the kids said, Mom, can he move in with us? And I said, of course. So I went over and I picked him up and loaded all his stuff in my van and came over, and we got him all settled in. And oh my gosh, that's been 9 years ago. So maybe 10.
Hmm.
And he still to this day on my birthday wishes me a happy birthday. I love you. You're the only mom I've ever really had.
I
Right?
love that. See, that's that kind of house that, God forbid, I wouldn't ever wish that, somebody's kid didn't have like a home or whatever,
Right.
but that's the house that we want to be. I don't want to be the
Right.
parents who are like, yeah, go to whoever's house, as annoying as they are. I want to be the house that everybody can come to, that
Right.
everybody, they can come and talk to us if they can't talk to whoever, just, I love that. That's the kind
Hmm.
of house that we want to be, where, they can count on us to be there and all that good stuff.
Right. Because, I've always felt that um, how I raise my children is everything. If I screwed up raising my children, then, I've not done my job as a
Right.
woman, as a mother, as a contributing person in society. But I
Hmm.
also felt that extended always to my children's friends.
Right.
So, right. So, my children's friends would always love to come over and eat at our house, um, and have snacks or dinner, lunch, whatever it was. Um,
Mhm.
but they also knew that my children couldn't go out and do something until their chores were done.
Right.
right? I was known as oh my gosh, Donna makes her kids do all kinds of chores.
But
But
see, you were known as like mom. You know, they could go to you, their friends could go to you, but then you have those houses where, you know, because I even had friends where like their parents, I could get away with things over there. You know,
right,
like that's the house that, you know, I don't want to be like known as the parent as, hey, we can go there because we can do this and that. You know, there's mom and, you know, gives that motherly, you know, love and support
right,
and all that. And then there's, well, we can go here because we can get away and do whatever, you know, wherever.
absolutely.
No boundaries. They can do whatever they want, you know, but you were mom. You were known as, you know, the house that they could go to and
They called me Mama Donna.
literally have a mom.
Right. And if they
That's
ate
awesome.
over, I didn't care. But it was
Right.
like, don't leave your plate on the table. You don't have hooks. Get up, scrape your plate
Right.
off, put it in the sink and rinse it.
Right.
There was just certain things that they had to do. And
Right.
after like the first time, boom, 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 they did it. It
There
wasn't an
you
issue because, I mean, I'll feed anybody.
go.
I
Right.
will feed anybody and have done so many times. But it's those footprints that we want to leave, and the
Yep.
motivating our children and getting them to understand on a subconscious level, going into a conscious level as they get older and develop, is what really makes the beautiful dynamics of this world,
Oh yeah.
right? Because that's our job. That's our job, is to motivate. We are motivate each other and our children at the different stages of their life. They don't. We're not. We're social creatures. We're not
Mhm.
designed to be alone, and we're
Right.
also not right. We're also not designed to live in a negative space.
Right.
I believe everybody has a gift, and
Hmm.
it's our job as parents to help our children grow their interests and their gifts, not trample
Right.
on it. And that starts with
Right.
motivation, building the
Hmm.
foundation.
For sure. And, you know, like you said, building on all the things that they're good on. And if they're not good at something, because I think with older kids, their biggest unmotivated kids I've read is just them being resistant. It's just resistance because they're scared to fail. And if you know, focus on the things that they're bad at, you know, trying to improve everything, like, well,
Yes,
so and so can do this, your brother or sister can do this, you know, understanding that every kid is different, you know, just because they're older doesn't mean that they're going to catch on to everything, you know,
right.
because we're not perfect, so we can't expect them to be. And just, you know, it's all about understanding and motivating where they are good and where
Hmm.
they can succeed, because that will help them feel motivated in doing other things, because to them they'll see that they can do things and that they are good at things,
Hmm.
but understanding they're not good at everything. But you
And
know,
that's
just like,
okay.
yeah, you know, artists, people who paint and make lots of money, you know, they're good at painting, you know, so it's like, if you want to paint, like, go sell your art, you know, you don't have to be a
Right.
doctor, you don't have to do this just because you feel like society tells you you have to, you know, you don't have to make the most money, you can do whatever makes you happy.
Hmm. And then you never work a day in your life,
Right.
right?
Right.
Right.
Enjoy what
But I
you're
love
doing.
that you said don't compare them to their siblings, because
Hmm.
that instills, first of all, their siblings are at a different age level. So they're at a different mental and physical maturity level, right?
Hmm.
So in comparing them to a sibling, I love that you brought that up, because that puts it in a negative space, that there's always going to be that natural sibling rivalry anyway,
Right.
right? So we
Right.
don't need to expound on that.
Right. You don't want them competing against each
Right,
other.
right, right. So, just motivating from them from within for who and what they are right
Right.
now at that age level that they are, and what that they can handle.
Yeah, that's super important when there's siblings, for sure. Especially, when there's a whole bunch of them, because that's the last thing that you want is for them to be arguing or them to feel like, I'm not loved because I'm not doing what Susie's doing. I have to
Right.
live up to what she's doing or whatever the issue may be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
Mhm.
this has been fun, and I can't believe our hour is already gone, Mikayla. But we're
I
going to be
know.
back tomorrow, folks, and we're going to talk about, oh boy, the teenage years and motivating our children in the teenage years. And, I'm glad that's behind me. I wouldn't want to go back, but I do have fond memories and some not so fond. But we will be talking about that because, as we all know, motivating ourselves and each other at different stages is incredibly important. And those teenage
Mhm.
years are a tough one, but they're important ones. So, on behalf of Mikayla and myself, we want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in wherever you are, morning or night, whichever platform you're seeing us on. And, as Jim says, make sure to love others, but love yourself first. Then you can love others better. So we
Right.
will see you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. Bye, folks.